We're back now with my guest, Dr. Colin Ross from the Ross Institute for Psychological Trauma. Dr. Ross has been with us tonight, spending time, and we appreciate all the information that he's sharing with us tonight. We're talking about now the Manchurian Candidate and getting a little bit deeper into the topic of mind control. So we're going to get right back to Dr. Ross and let him just continue to spin this yarn that is just incredible. So
I want to do a little quick side story on BZ.
Okay, great.
Because it illustrates how all this stuff has really been known but not known for a long time. So what on earth is BZ? Well, there's a movie called Jacob's Ladder starring Tim Robbins, which was a small independent film that came out a while back.
I've seen it many years ago, and to be honest, I can't quite place what it was about.
Well, that's because you can't really tell when you're watching the movie what it's about exactly. Because it's one of those ones that sort of past, present, flashback, what's real, what's not real, and you're kind of lost in it.
Okay.
But it starts out with a combat scene in Vietnam, where these guys are in the jungle, and there's a whole bunch of guns going off, and all of a sudden everybody just kind of goes crazy and is tripped out on something, and hallucinating, and a lot of guys are getting killed by friendly fire. And then it's kind of this dreamy, whole, hallucinated, trying to piece together what the story is. And the drug that everybody's hallucinating on is BZ in the movie. And there's a couple scenes in there where Tim Robbins is trying to figure out what happened, and he's talking to a chemist who's very paranoid and saying, yeah, BZ, man. I thought, oh, well, that's an interesting movie. Lo and behold, I'm reading the Senate testimony from 1975 when the lead counsel for the U.S. Army hands over to the Senate committee a list of about 130 different drugs that were used by the Army in mind control experiments.
Okay.
One of which is BZ.
Are you kidding me?
So BZ is a natural, real thing that was used on soldiers without their consent, without their knowing what it was, during the Vietnam War. And somebody in Hollywood knew about that, found out about it, made a movie about it, and got the movie out into public. So this information is circulating around.
Wow.
And I've talked to Vietnam vets who described going on an extraction mission way in country, and they land, and it's the same story. They find a bunch of U.S. forces, special forces guys, completely tripped out, kind of picking molecules out of the air.
Right.
100 yards away, there's the VC, all tripped out, picking molecules out of the air because they've been sprayed with something. There's an experiment going on of some kind. Incredible. He said that happened more than once.
Wow.
So, coming back to the Manchurian Candidate, which was a book and movie in the 50s.
Right.
It's just been remade as a movie with Denzel Washington.
Yeah, in fact, when I heard about the remake, for whatever reason, I walked by my bookshelf and I saw Bluebird sitting there, and I thought, dang it, I got to call Colin Ross, and I've got to get him on the air, and that was the original sort of impetus to get me to get in touch with you. So
I owed all to Denzel Washington. Well, that's a good movie, the Denzel Washington version of the Manchurian Candidate. It's quite switched around from the 1950s version that starred Frank Sinatra.
Right.
But there's brain electrodes in that. So when you watch that movie, you think, oh yeah, good movie. The thing is that brain electrodes are a reality.
And were a reality.
Back in the late 50s,
right.
They already were able to control people's behavior by pushing buttons on a box. So then, late 50s, how much more miniaturized, computerized, and high-tech do we think it's gotten since then? Obviously a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where it's almost incomprehensible if you look at mathematics and you look at the curve of technology and what it's done over time, over the last 50 years, you find basically an exponential curve.
Right, so there's nothing in that Hollywood movie that is not absolutely based on fact, completely possible. And the Manchurian Candidate, the movie, the reason the book and the movie are called the Manchurian Candidate is the basic, in the original Manchurian Candidate in the 50s, the scenario was Frank Sinatra and some other GIs are going through Manchuria during the Korean War.
Okay.
They're captured, and they're taken to a brainwashing center where communist Chinese guys basically hypnotize them, terrorize them, drug them, and they end up back in the United States with amnesia for all of that. And then one of them has been programmed to assassinate a presidential candidate.
Okay.
And the mother, played by Angela Lansbury,
that's right.
is this not very nice mother
Right.
who's in on it, who's his handler in the United States.
Right.
And he's triggered by Queen of Diamonds, I think it is.
It is the Queen of Diamonds.
And what happens is then he flips into this hypnotically created identity who is the assassin, but he has amnesia for that. So, okay, that's good fiction. And the lead psychologist in MKUltra testified to the U.S. Senate in the 70s that the Manchurian Candidate was obviously fiction, but it's not, it's a fact. And I know that again from these documents. And published as early as 1943 and as late as 1971, G.H. Estabrooks describes, he was a psychologist who was at Colgate College in Upper New York, he describes creating and running operations for the War Department during the Second World War, in which he created Manchurian candidates. So he hypnotizes a guy, conditions him, creates this new identity. So he talks about a Marine. He says there's Jones A, Jones B. Jones A is the regular Marine. Jones B is the Manchurian candidate, the artificially created identity.
Okay.
And what he does is he'll use a hypnotic trigger, which can be a code word. In the CIA documents, they describe tones over the phone, hand signals, any kind of signal can be used to flip the person to their hypnotic identity.
Their alter.
Their alter personality. And then they can either be given classified information for a career assignment, or they will play the role of a communist, subversive, student radical, whatever you want them to do. And they will actually believe that they are a student radical. And so they'll be very convincing, and they'll be unaware of their normal, regular identity. And then what happens is you can flip them back to their regular person, who's just a regular Marine or a regular whoever, who has no knowledge of this mission they've been on.
So it's the
which could be career, infiltration, penetration, or assassination missions. And he describes running these guys operationally. And so he could be just telling tall tales. But my research assistant went up to Colgate College and photocopied a lot of stuff from his archives there, which includes his contract with the War Department, correspondence between him and J. Edgar Hoover running from the 1930s forward to the late 60s, seminars that he gave at a bunch of different military bases on the subject of uses of hypnosis in warfare, seminars he gave at his own college where FBI and military personnel came to listen, publications where he and documented MKUltra contractors with top secret clearance were writing together, publishing together, corresponding with each other. So he was very highly connected to all the way up to J. Edgar Hoover.
Right.
And I also have his correspondence with the CIA in the Bluebird Artichoke era, where he's making Manchurian candidate proposals. And in a lot of the documents, Bluebird and Artichoke, Project Dolphin, MKUltra, it explicitly describes creating new identities, creating amnesia, implanting new memories, wiping out people's memories. It's very clear, it's very detailed. It's not a matter of interpretation or making a guess. The Manchurian candidate is absolutely factual. It has been used operationally going back at least as far as the Second World War.
Incredible. Now,
and I would say, well, all the documentation stops basically early 70s.
Okay.
So after that, we're not talking facts, we're just talking what I believe must be the case.
Right, speculation. Right.
I would say there's got to be Manchurian candidate sleepers in place all around the world, being run by all the major terrorist organizations and all the intelligence agencies. Which, I guess it's not any worse than shooting somebody, hypnotize them, make them believe they're somebody else. But the problem comes back to there's a psychiatrist involved. There's psychiatric mind control. What are the ethics? What's the consent?
Right.
How's it followed up? What happens to these people afterwards?
Right.
What happens if one of these people kind of like blows a fuse as a civilian 10 years later?
Right, which we know has happened many times. Well, it's crazy, and it also it gives perfect plausible deniability. You know, for the directors of the operation or whatever, they have a perfect tool because
Right.
that tool itself doesn't even know that it performed the op.
That's the whole idea.